In this episode, we're going to be chatting with Rolf Asphaug. He is a 67-year-old through hiker, who just recently completed a solo northbound trek of the John Muir Trail, and he has completed the Colorado Trail, that frickin' Benton Mackay Trail, that's what it is. That one, Four Pass Loop, Denver Orbital Trail, and he did a 2,500 mile walk from Arizona to Oregon back in 1987. The reason I had Rolf on today was because we've been communicating for a couple years now, but I've been particularly inspired by him and his age. Typically, when you're 67, you're thinking about slowing down. Rolf seems to be speeding up. And so that's kind of going to be what we're talking about with this episode today. I think you're going to find it super inspiring. We're going to be talking about the past hikes, the importance of staying fit, using the right gear, being ultra light, taking precautions, hiking solo. We get into a lot of solo talk. And yeah, just the mental and physical benefits of hiking and Rolf's future plans. So this is a great episode. It's going to be very inspiring for y'all. Also, if you guys like this episode, please do me a favor and please leave a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple. If you notice, I stopped running ads on this because I would love to get my reviews up. I want to get to 100 by the end of the year. I think I'm at 73 right now, which is up from about, 59 or something like that a couple months ago. So thanks so much for leaving a review. Thanks for helping out. And yeah, we'll be bringing you more and more guests. It keeps me motivated. Thanks. Let's get to it. Dude, you wrapped up a solo northbound John Muir Trail trek, right? 242 miles. Right. That's some rugged ass country, ain't it? What do you think of that, man?
You know, it was great. It was a lifelong dream of mine, or a dream for the last 38 years, to hike that trail. And it was every bit as challenging as I thought it would be. And I was lucky. I had pretty good weather for almost all of the trail, except the last 3 days when the rainstorms came down like crazy, rain and hail and more lightning than I've ever seen.
Really?
But before then, it was just really, really nice. Very hot, very dry, but I really enjoyed the trail.
Yeah. Well, man, it's great to have you on. I'm so stoked to talk to you. We've kind of talked back and forth. I know ever since we both did the Colorado Trail in 21, right? And we've kind of talked back and forth and stuff. Yeah. And dude, you're in your late 60s right now. You said you're 67?
That's right.
So
that's right.
What, a lot of people when they're that age, they're thinking, I'm from Wisconsin, right? Like if I talk to a 67-year-old in Wisconsin, like, dude, they're definitely thinking about slowing down at this point, right? But you seem to be almost speeding up. So, dude, what's keeping you hungry for these types of challenges? What's inspiring you?
Well, I did have a desk job for most of my life. I was a lawyer and for a government agency, and so I was sitting around a lot. But I did also live in Colorado for most of my professional career. And that gave me the opportunity to go outside. And oh my gosh, Colorado, the terrain, the mountains, you look out your window every day here and you see these amazing mountains. And when I retired with amazing luck in February 2020, right before COVID hit, I retired and thought, I want to get out, and I've got this time. I've been granted reasonably good health. I'm lucky to have that for the time being. And, let's get out and explore nature. And I have just loved it, absolutely loved it. And so I for a long time, I thought I would like to hike the Colorado Trail. I met my wife through hiking, and she unfortunately can't hike quite as much with some plantar fasciitis and stuff like that. But she was very, very supportive of that. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to try that and see what happens.
Wow.
After that, it just sort of took off, and I just kept thinking every year I want to try to do something a little different. And honestly, I've gotten in better shape over the past 5 years. The highest I've been in the past 5 years was about 212 pounds, and I'm now at about 165. And that has really made a difference I don't think I could have finished the John Muir Trail if I'd been 212 or 205 as I had been, for a couple of the earlier trails, in the Colorado Trail, the Benton MacKay Trail. Um, so it's just helped me to be lighter. It's helped me to get out almost every day and hike at least some. And it's helped me to use good trekking shoes, not boots, but trekking shoes and trekking poles. I think especially when you're older like me, you start losing your balance a little bit, and I think trekking poles are very, very important to to stay healthy and stay on my feet. So
Wow. So take me back to, when you were a lawyer and you were working this desk job. Okay. So
yeah.
did you have a yearning to do what you're doing now, but you kind of couldn't take the time off type of thing, and yeah, what was that like? I mean, I'm sure there had to be a conflict there at that point.
Yeah, conflicts and compromises. There's um, when I first started working as a lawyer, I was working in Houston for a big old law factory type firm. Insane hours. I was totally unhealthy, both physically and mentally. And I and I just had some sort of feeling like this isn't right. This isn't what I want to be or do. Um, and somehow, this is serendipity, but a book by a guy named Peter Jenkins somehow landed in my hands. I don't know how I found it, but it was called Walk Across America. And that was about a guy who, kind of like me, was unhappy where he was and decided to do something completely different. And for him, he, with practically a penny in his pocket, just decided to start walking across the United States. And from east to west, took him 5 years because he had no money. He would just walk until he ran out of money and then take a job and work there for several months or maybe a year or two and just keep walking. And it was the romance of it really caught me. And I'm sitting here in Houston in my crazy job reading this book and saying, wow, I want to do something like that. So I came up with something like that. I found a Rand McNally atlas and decided to walk from Mexico to Canada. Um, did I know about the Continental Divide? I don't even know if the Continental Divide Trail was around in 1987, but I think the Pacific Crest Trail might have been, and certainly the Appalachian Trail was, but none of those big trails. I think if I'd even thought about them, I would have thought there's no way a mere mortal like me could do something like that. So I thought I'll be more comfortable walking on the roads and for the most part. So I ended up cobbling that together and I ended up walking um, most of that way. Um, but as I was walking along, I realized also I'm not a super athlete. I'm not like you or some of the other folks you've got on your podcast. I'm a pretty average guy, and I but I also liked being outside, and so and I liked lawyering. I kept telling war stories about being a lawyer. So for me uh, the best combination of all that was to find a job where I could work as a lawyer, which I love doing, but also have the opportunity to get outside. And when I ended up with a transit agency here in Denver, that was ideal because I was able to work there. I was able to get outdoors quite a bit. I joined the Colorado Mountain Club, which was the best way ever. I met my wife through the CMC, and I got great training in being in the backcountry, through other volunteers. Um, it's affordable, uh, awesome education. So that's how I ended up being interested. So for the past quite a few years, I've definitely gotten outside a lot, and I've hiked around. I've climbed a lot of mountains and stuff, but I never really had done a through hike or anything like that on a trail for a long distance until I retired.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's take you back to the. You kind of skipped over this, right? Like you're like,
Sure.
yeah, well, I kind of did a little bit of a hike, right, in 1987. But from your email, right, this is a 2,500-mile trek, right?
It was about 2,500, I think, when all was said and done. I had all these different detours and stuff, but I also uh, I ended up not going the whole way from Mexico to Canada. I was the night before my brother was going to drop me off south of Tucson. I got into a car accident and I had to recuperate for several weeks. So I ended up hiking from a little north of Tucson. So already the continuity was broken. So
Yeah.
I think it's important. That's one of the things I like about a through hike is this feeling like there's a definite end and a beginning, and that keeps you kind of inspired to keep going when it gets a little bit tough.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do have to quit, but it just makes you it gives you just a little more of a spark to keep going. So for me, when I got up through Arizona, I did hike across the Grand Canyon. I hiked through Zion National Park, but then the next step for me was that this ridiculous plan I had was that I was going to walk along Interstate 15 um, for like 2 weeks in June through in Nevada. I got one day out of St. George, Utah, and realized this is sheer insanity. I'm going to die out here. So I went back, took a bus to Barstow, and then kept on walking from Barstow, California. And that's where I really that's why I now hike the John Muir Trail. It was back in 1987. I did hike in the High Sierras up to and over Mount Whitney. But once I got to Mount Whitney, I decided to hike out to the valley, Highway 395, Long Pine, and all that. And I just walked up the valley for, I don't know, a week or two to Tuolumne Meadows, and then got into Yosemite, and then got to the Yosemite Backcountry office, and they told me, why don't you try hiking along that Hetch Hetchy Reservoir? That'll get you across the park. And so my goal was to get across the park and then hike to the coast of California. So in between Mount Whitney and Tuolumne was this area I'd never hiked before, and that's exactly what I wanted to do now with the John Muir Trail.
With the John Muir Trail. So I was kind of talking to you about it before the podcast, but I had a guy, his name's Clint, hit me up on Facebook, and he's like, he said, hey man, basically he wants to do a through hike, his first ever through hike. And he's between the Colorado Trail and he's between the John Muir Trail. And he says, obviously the CT is longer, but what do you recommend which one do you think is more rugged and more tough, right? I'm curious to know what your answer with that would be, because Rolf and I both hiked the Colorado Trail in 2021. When did you start, by the way?
I started like June 26th, I believe.
Okay, I was the 30th, June 30th. So we were probably around on the same time. You're probably a little bit ahead of me.
You must have passed me very easily at some point.
Maybe.
Because I'm sure you were a lot faster.
Well, that was just because, Rolf, I had a job and I was like, man, they give you just enough time off where they won't fire you type of thing. And I was like, I gotta freaking cruise on this thing. And so, I was cruising, but I'm curious, man, like, what do you think? How do they compare and contrast? Which one do you think is tougher overall? Just mile for mile.
Mile for mile, I think the John Muir Trail is tougher, and I'll tell you why.
Me too.
I'd be curious what you think. The reasons for me are, number one, logistics. You can't resupply anywhere near as easily or as often on the John Muir Trail as you can on the Colorado Trail. You can't get off the trail as easily if something goes wrong. I'm a volunteer shuttler for the Colorado Trail because I only live about 15 miles from its northern start at Waterton Canyon, and so it's pretty easy to get from downtown Denver to the start of the trail, and it's pretty easy to find somebody who can rescue you or get you stuff if you need it. Hey, by the way, how's the visual looking for you? You're looking a little blurry to me right now.
It looks good. Sometimes when we're sending video together, it'll be a little blurry, but when we put it on YouTube or something, it'll look good.
Terrific.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure. But anyway, I do think the Colorado Trail is easier for logistics. I think they're roughly similar when it comes to, ups and downs and the passes and all that. Well, that's not true. I think the John Muir Trail passes are harder on the whole, but there are some passes that are really interesting on the Colorado Trail, especially Hope Pass and all that. But I think the passes on the John Muir Trail were really, really interesting and rugged. But the Colorado Trail is longer, and the Colorado Trail has some segments that, for some people at least, seem a little boring. It's like they're long, sort of what do you call it? Ranching type terrain, not really the high mountains. But hey, it's all part of Colorado, and I found those areas really interesting too.
Man,
but I would recommend to anybody take the Colorado Trail first.
Yeah, and which is counterintuitive because it's more miles, right? Like, because you think like, okay, I'm going to save a lesser mile one or I'm going to start with a lesser mile one I mean,
Right.
that's where my head went, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I agree, Rolf. I mean, especially starting Nobo like we did, you're adding on extra mileage coming in, 30,
Yeah.
20, 30 extra miles than going Sobo. You are 100% right. That is one thing I actually didn't mention to him was the logistics of resupply. I mean, I was carrying 8.5 days of food out of,
Yeah.
it was crazy, right?
I cannot imagine carrying that amount of food. I could not have done it at my age. I'm just amazed. And I met some people on the trail this year who were doing that. 8.5, 10 days. I met someone carrying 10 days of food. It was like, how do you even physically fit that in your pack, let alone just carry it? Because you have to use bear canisters out
Hurricanes. Yeah.
on the JMT.
Yeah.
But although I think you had Andrew Skirka on, did he say he once carried 3 bear canisters in his pack?
Yeah, that's what he said,
I
man.
think
But
he
he's an
said,
animal. He's the goat, right? It's like,
oh,
okay.
he's unbelievable. He
Yeah.
was an inspiration on hiking the trail, hiking the JMT too.
Oh, really?
And you and several other people who I did a lot of research and watched a lot of videos and podcasts and stuff. But the logistics are tough on the JMT. Just getting a permit and just getting out there, you got to be out there right on that day. You got to be out there.
Yeah.
Just navigating the whole permit system can be really demoralizing and difficult for people,
Yeah.
and just finding your way out there and back. So I would highly recommend the Colorado Trail. And if any of your watchers or listeners are interested in hiking the Colorado Trail, please have them get in touch with me, and hell, I'll shuttle them out to the trail. So
Heck
I
yeah.
love
Right on, man. Yeah, and so that's
yeah.
how you're emailing me before. You're saying that's how you met Mateo, which
Yes,
man, I haven't talked with him for a couple of years. I'm hoping his backpacking company is going good. Volpe, I think it is, right? Volpe is
Mateo Volpe, Volpe
yeah,
Packs.
Volpe packs. Yeah.
He's I just really admire his personal story. He's a guy who lives down in Guadalajara, Mexico. He pays his workers probably 3 or 4 times the going rate because he wants people to have good jobs and avoid getting sucked into the cartels and all that. And he walks the walk, and he also makes damn good products.
He
Uh,
does.
I'm not sure if he used to sell them on Garage Grown Gear. I'm not sure if he is right now, but he's selling them through his own website, and I use his packs practically every single day I'm out hiking for. I'm too much. I'm not enough of an ultralight hiker to fit my gear into his packs for long distance hiking. I've got more stuff,
Yeah.
but for day hikes, his packs are perfect for me.
Oh wow. Well, cool, man. So you did the JMT and I think you did the CT solo as well, right?
Yeah, for the most part. The CT, I tell you, you've talked also about, I think, getting on Facebook groups and how useful that can be for research. And for the CT, I got on their Facebook groups, and I met a guy named Eric who just contacted me and said, "Hey, we seem to be roughly a similar age." He was very polite. He's probably 10 years younger than me, but he said, "How about we be accountability buddies for training?" Which was awesome because I needed accountability to train. I was not doing the best job of training back then. So he and I got together. We did some hikes, practice hikes together. And for the first 4 days or so, I hiked out with him and his wife, and we just had a great time together. I wish I could have hiked the rest of the trail with them, but I had to go back for a wedding, and they were ahead. But I did end up with a trail family a little later on, which is really funny. Here's me in my 60s, and the rest of my trail family were 5 people, all in their early 20s, early to mid 20s, and but something happened that we just sort of all gelled, and I never felt like I could have been their granddad, but I never felt like that.
Dude, that's
Um,
so
and then on the Benton Mackay Trail, which is out east, which is kind of is contiguous with the Appalachian Trail down in Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina, I did hike again. That one I hiked completely with Eric and Elizabeth the entire way. So for
gotcha.
the John Muir Trail, I'd met a fellow. We had done Trail Angel and Trail Magic together on the Colorado Trail. A guy named Steve, wonderful guy. We drove out from Colorado together to start the JMT. The day before we were going to start, he was just not feeling good. He went to a clinic, found out he had a bacterial infection that was pretty serious. And the doc said, you can't hike for at least probably 3 weeks to a month. So he had driven all the way out there. He dropped me off at Cottonwood Lakes,
Whoa.
then drove all the way back to Colorado. And then, bless him, he came all the way back out again to pick me up. I said, you don't need to
Oh,
do that. But he was just, he did it. And so I'm looking forward to doing more hiking with him. But he and I both, he said, yeah, I'm not sure about if I want to do all that planning to get all the way out there for the JMT just to have to turn around. So we'll find some stuff closer to home, like the Wind River Range, um, and stuff like that. So,
Dude,
but yeah, but
what
I
a
heck, most of it's solo.
okay. So he, I'm curious, like, the solo nature of hikes. There's could be pros and cons of that, right?
Right.
How, like, for you, how do you tell the difference between, the solitude that's restorative, right? Because
Right.
sometimes it's real good. It's real nice. You can get into a nice flow state by yourself and you're flowing good and you feel good and
Right.
whatever. But then the solitude that edges towards that loneliness. How do you
Right.
grapple with those two things, or what's that been like for you?
I know that can be different for people because there are people who say, I'm just really lonely out here. I remember meeting a guy on the Colorado Trail who just said, I'm going to quit because I'm just so damn bored. I have nobody to talk with. He didn't have anything like a Kindle or anything, so he had long stretches where he was alone with his thoughts. And, there's kind of a limit to that, I suppose, but I am a little bit more of a loner when it comes to hiking. I do like having the solitude. I do like not having to start and stop and worry about other people starting and stopping. And so every day now I work as a volunteer park patroller. So I'm out hiking by myself and, I meet people, I say hi and I can talk with them if they want, but I'm, hiking by myself and I like that. Now, the downside for me is when I'm solo, I have this little thing going between my ears called my fearful brain. And anything that happens, if I hear a rustling in the brush, with experience now, I realize that 9 times out of 10, that rustling is like a little bird. But
Yeah.
in the beginning, and even still, it'll be like, is that a mountain lion? Is that a bear? You know, I will be hiking along lightning, for example. I'll be hiking along if I hear lightning way, way far away and I'm in the middle of deep woods. I still instinctively crouch down when I hear a lightning strike, um, just because my brain gets the fearful part of my brain will sometimes get the better part of me when I'm alone. I have to recognize that. And sometimes I'll laugh at myself because I'm just walking along, coming up with these totally ridiculous ideas of how I can die, dumb ways to die. While I'm walking on this trail and I might trip over my shoelace, even though I don't use shoelaces, I use lace locks, but I might trip over my shoelace and I might fall down this cliff and I might end up dying. And it's like, realistically, no, that's not going to happen because the cliff is like at a 30-degree angle and there's trees all the way down there. But your brain starts playing tricks with you. So for me, I just have to recognize that, tamp it down a little bit, or sometimes just kind of make myself laugh by just going through all the ridiculous scenarios and playing it out like a movie script and then realizing it is a script. It's just a script between my ears. So I get more of that when I'm hiking alone, but I take common sense precautions when I'm hiking alone. And a lot of people will say you're nuts for hiking solo. And they are right. If you don't tell people where you are, they're absolutely right. If you don't tell people when to expect you, and you listen to podcasts about survival, and the common thread seems to be I didn't tell someone where I was going. I didn't. I didn't have any way to communicate. I always carry, even on trails down here in near Denver, I always carry a Garmin InReach in me so that I can communicate with your satellite if there's something wrong, if I see something wrong with myself or with somebody else. When I'm on a long hike, I am always texting my wife several times a day, and I always let her know when I'm starting and when I'm stopping, so she can see using the Garmin. She can see on the map exactly where I am. It gives her great comfort, and we like to talk together. Now it costs a little more to do that. When I start a through hike, I'll get on their expedition plan, and that'll cost like $50 a month for unlimited, texting.
Texting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's great. Like this last trip, I'm in the middle of the John Muir Trail, and she's a teacher, and she contacted me and said, "My printer's not working." And so back and forth on the Garmin, I did tech support from the middle of the John Muir Trail to get her printer going again.
Oh
So,
man.
but you got to take common sense precautions like that.
I love that. No,
And
that's
know your
great. That's
limits. Yeah,
yeah.
know your limits, and then have the right gear with you. Don't be a slave to being ultralight so that you don't have enough, warm weather, warm clothes
Yeah.
with you, all that stuff.
So we just and this is the funny thing too. And like I'm totally the same as you to where I prefer going solo because I feel like I'm not committed to somebody on the trail in terms
Right.
of if I get hurt, if they get hurt, if they want to leave, if I want to keep hiking. It's like there's just so much logistical stuff that can become a nightmare, right?
Right.
But then it's funny because there is like we just talked, for the last 5 minutes about like, hey, here's some of the very big precautions you need to know about. Like there's some pretty big cons with it. But it sounds like for you, the pros still outweigh those cons for you when you're
They
hiking
do.
solo.
Hiking solo for me is tends to be the way I like to go. My wife's not super happy about that sometimes, but she recognizes that, and
Yeah.
um, I think that, and even when when you hike with other people, you're really not hiking in lockstep anyway. If you're on a long through hike, you'll be
Right.
like, okay, I'm going at this pace, you're going at that pace. I'll see you at this location, or I'll see you at the end of the day. And then it's just important to know exactly where that location is. And the few times even with Eric and Elizabeth, when we were hiking the Colorado Trail, the very second day of the third day we were hiking the trail, um, something as simple as I'm going to hop off the trail to go to the bathroom. Um, and I didn't let them know. Uh, and then they kept on going. I thought they were still behind me. They were ahead of me. No, oh, it was the opposite. I thought they were ahead of me, and I kept hiking faster and faster. And it's like, I can't catch these guys. And they were behind me, wondering, where's Rolf? So it's just, you can have that kind of problem. Ultimately, we got it sorted out, but it was a little bit of anxiety creating, and it was
Yeah.
just, add in some bad weather or really rough terrain, and suddenly you've got a real adventure going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can throw in some complications for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, solo I think is the rewards for me are that you can really stop if you want to take a look at a beetle on the trail, just
Totally.
a dung beetle. You can just sit there and take as long as you want to look at this amazing animal. And if you want to look
Totally.
at, take pictures of. I love taking pictures of plants and flowers and stuff, uh, or just setting up to take just the shot you want to get. You can do that. Or if you're like you and others who like to take video of themselves on the trail, to just show what a
Yeah.
trail's like, you can do that in a way that if you're hiking with somebody else, it's like, wait, let me set up my camera and run back
Oh,
and
it
get it.
is. It is, man. It's so annoying hiking with me. Like nobody would want to through hike with me totally. You know what I mean? Because I'm always doing that. Although I will say sometimes it's actually easier to go with somebody because then you can just film them walking
Right.
instead of having to set up the tripod all the time. So it's all, man,
Yeah.
everything is pros and cons, right? Like
Yeah.
it's pros and cons all over the place. But I think it's great. Like I agree with everything you're saying there. And I would say that I actually hike more conservatively in terms of risk or climbing,
Yes.
whatever, if I'm going by myself than if I have a partner. And I think it's kind of that quagmire you can get into with backcountry skiing when people have avalanche bags and stuff. Like
Right.
might they might have a proclivity to do more risky things because they think they can get away with it versus if they didn't have the Avi bag type of thing. And I almost
Right.
kind of see that with me in solo hiking and going with somebody. Do you think about that at all? Does that ever come into play for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I used to do backcountry skiing with the Colorado Mountain Club, doing telemark skiing, the there is sometimes with backcountry skiing, the number one thing you have to watch out for is avalanches, especially here in Colorado. It's like the avalanche capital. And when you're with a group, you get into that group mindset where it's like, well, he went across or she went across this slope, so I guess it's okay. So I'll do it too. And looking back, there were a couple of times when, especially once I was in a group, we were skiing and hiking up Snowmass Mountain. And we objectively realized going up, this is not a great day to get up on that ridge from that big huge bowl, because there were fresh avalanche runs here and there, and we were heading right up over a cornice that had not avalanched. And I finally just said, uh, "I've reached my limit. I'm just staying down here at the bowl." And the other three folks said, "Are you sure?" Um, I was a little mad at the leader because the leader just kept on going, and I watched them from below as they were hacking their way through a cornice, and I just was angry because I just thought, if they get buried in an avalanche, I'm going to have to try to rescue all of them. We had beacons, yes. We had shovels, yes. But, you know, I was already pretty exhausted, and the idea of people potentially dying or else trying to, to, to rescue them was just going through my mind for hours as I sat there. And they made it fine. They came back. They sort of laughed a little bit at my timidness, and that got me a little angrier too. You can tell I'm still a little angry about it. Um, but we found out later that day that 6 people had died in an avalanche on the Maroon Bells on that very same day, um, because the snow conditions right around that time, and the Maroon Bells were pretty close to Snowmass Mountain,
Wow.
um,
In the Elks.
were
Yeah.
was unstable. Yeah, it was all part of the Elk Range, so it was unstable. So I felt a little vindicated, but I'm glad I wasn't, ultimately vindicated by having these other folks get buried in an avalanche. So that's
That's
something where you can have that group set, where it's like, I guess it's all right because they're doing it, right? So I guess it's all right for me to do it too. So we have to watch out about that and be more cautious with stuff like that.
Man, so many comments on that. One, Snowmass is a hell of a mountain to get into. Number
Yeah,
one, I mean,
yeah,
holy cow, that's a trek to get in there. And yeah, I think another important point is even though they went up and you didn't, you still felt obligated to stay there to be able to rescue them because they would have no other person to rescue them if all three were buried.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so the choices you make when you're in a group like that, I guess you
effect.
have to think about the choices you make and how that can impact other people. Um, I had another trip like that I was leading with the Colorado Mountain Club where we were skiing up Quandary Peak, and I was leading that trip. And there was a guy on the trip who was from France who was visiting, and he decided it was too tame of a trip for him. We were going up the east route, which is a nice blue kind of slope, to ski down.
Mhm.
And he decided, oh, I want to ski down something called the Cristo Colar, which goes off
I
the.
did that. Yeah, I know that
Did you
one.
do
I
that?
did that. Yeah, I
Oh,
did Cristo. Yeah, that's steep.
I don't think I'll ever do. Well, I know I'll never do that now, uh, but um, but okay, that wasn't the trip we were doing. And what made it even worse was the weather started setting in. It started getting cloudy. It was kind of hard to see people, and we're up on the summit, and it's suddenly, where's so and so? Oh, I think he went off this other way. It's like we didn't even know for sure if he'd gone down the Cristo Couloir. He was just gone. And the whole way back, I'm thinking he might still be up on the mountain there somewhere, and I just don't know. We can't see him because it's so foggy and such whiteout conditions. So we finally get down, and he comes skiing up. Oh yeah, I just decided to take this other route, and I was just furious because his selfish decision to do something that gave him great pleasure, you know, caused tremendous anxiety for all of the rest of us. So, that's
Totally.
something when you're with a group, you got to remember when you're solo. Yeah, if you want to take a risk like that, so be it. I hope you let people know where you're going because if you don't, then you can cause tremendous anxiety for other people. But if you let people know where you're going and when to expect you, um, I think it's legitimately okay to take some risks. If you take no risks in life, we'll be sitting on those couches and we won't be getting out on the JMT or the CT or anything like that. But
Totally.
you have to use common sense and you have to be respectful for other people and your loved ones and all that.
Oh, I hope people go back and re-listen to that. That was some gold there, Rolf.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, man. That was awesome.
It comes from experience, I guess, from good and bad experience. And I've certainly broken those rules myself sometimes and
Yeah.
then think about it later and think, well, this wasn't such a bad idea. I should have let someone know where it was going.
Right. No,
So
it's funny. So actually last year I was backcountry skiing too, and it was just here in the snowy range, and it was with me, a buddy, and then another buddy. And this was kind of where it was the same type of situation you're talking about on Snowmass on a smaller scale. But it was where he wanted to one of the buddies wanted to go ride something that was, past 30 degrees on a high Avi day that me and my buddy didn't want to ride. We wanted to ride some lower angle stuff. It's a cold, cold day, right?
yeah,
And he's like, no, I want to do this or whatever. And so we that now forces us to wait for him
right,
to now skin up all the way to the top of where he wants to get to, transition, get all the way back down, ski again, and then retransition in order for us to leave and go do what we actually want to do.
right,
And like I was saying, it was just so cold that one thing that we've learned actually within the last couple of years here is if you go like this, if people are watching me on video, if you like wave your hands like this for about a good minute, it actually puts blood back into your hands. I don't
Yes.
know what is going on with that, but it was amazing. So we're sitting there like this the whole time. And then I literally get out of my split board and I'm having to do it with my toes because I'm so freaking cold, dude. And I'll tell you this, I never invited this guy back. I
Yeah.
haven't went skiing with him since. And I told my other buddy that because we're closer. I was like, dude, that was so, like you were saying, that was just so selfish.
Yeah.
And if that's, you have to be a team out there, especially with things like backcountry skiing. When you have their back, they have your back. Like you have to be a team. And that was not a team player.
You
And
really
that
did.
was, I was like, sayonara, man, I'm
But
good.
the same kind of dynamics important for through hiking with a group or with friends or even or if you meet a trail family. It's important to have those conversations about when will we stick together and when will we go apart. And I think you got to have honest conversations. Like if Steve had gotten sick, or if Steve had noticed he was sick, like a day later, we had already reached the agreement that if one of us gets off the trail, both of us get off the trail.
Nice. That
You know,
dude.
he's
Yes.
younger than me, but we're still both old enough that it's like no, let's stick together and not the trail will be there later. Um, as it was, he was considerate enough. I know driving the whole way out there, he was not feeling that great, but he could have. I might have said, well, I'll give it a try and see what happens, but that would have impacted him and me, and his infection was serious enough that that would have probably been a helicopterable uh,
Mm.
event if as it turned out. I've known someone else who's had that particular. It's called Campylobacter, and you can get that from hunting. By the way, you can get that from grouse or things like that aren't properly cleaned. Um, so clean your hands and clean. Make sure your utensils and everything are clean because Campylobacter is. I'd never heard of it before, but it's serious stuff. Um, but anyway, yeah, that's something where you with through hiking, you have to have those honest conversations about, well, I want to take a side trip to hike up a 14er while I'm on the Colorado Trail. Okay, great. I
Right.
don't. So let's figure out, what we're going to do. You know, um, Hiking up a 14er on a well established trail, I'd be probably okay with somebody saying, yeah, okay, I'm going to rest and, kind of take a 0 day on the trail here while you go up and hike that if I don't want to do it myself. But
Yeah.
if someone says I'm on the John Muir Trail and I think I'm going to take the Skirka High Route instead of crossing the river, the San Jacinto River on the bridge, that's a whole different kettle of fish, and that's going to really impact you. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, having those conversations beforehand, before you're out on the trail, you're in the mix of everything, you're tired, you're fatigued, you haven't slept, right? Weather's
yeah,
coming in or whatever, to have those conversations. Yeah, I think that's cold. Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
So going back to, you said you linked up with a trail family and they were all in like their 20s, right?
Yeah.
So when you are hiking with this younger crowd, right? Like what's going through your mind? Are you like, man, I wish I was young again. Look at these
Oh
guys
yeah, for
crushing it.
sure.
Or are you grateful to be like, yo, I'm 67 years old and I'm hoofing it with these guys. Like, is there kind of a gratefulness, but also kind of a little bit of an attitude like, gosh, dang it, man, I wish I kind of was young again. Like, what's that look like for you at 67?
That's a great question. And I think there's a little bit of both. I mean, I think I've been fortunate enough that I have had some adventures back when I was in my 20s and 30s and, early 40s and stuff. So I've been able to enjoy some of that. But there are definitely other times where it's like, man, if I probably would never be that fit, but if I was, that young, I'd be able to do a whole lot more because like two of the folks who were in my trail family, ended up hiking the PCT this year before last, or in 2024. And they both crushed it. And it's like, the ability to go 30, 35-mile days. I don't know if I ever had that ability, but I certainly don't have it now. The most I've ever hiked in one day is 22. And that's a hell of a long day for me.
Heck yeah, Rolf.
I'm
Yeah.
going about 14 is seems to be my average on almost all the trails I'm on. It seems like 14 seems to be my sweet spot. But But yeah, seeing them, um, it makes you feel a little proud sometimes that you can sort of keep up with them. In fact, one of the guys, Kai, uh, I overheard him saying to somebody else, "Yeah, that Rolf looks pretty slow, but in the end of the day, he catches up with us." That made me feel pretty good. Um, you know,
Yeah.
can I tell you another funny thing along those lines about being an older hiker? You had two
Absolutely.
guests on your podcast a while back. They were Tim and Renee. They're legendary hikers, and they first came to prominence because they hiked the Continental Divide Trail and they did these series of TikTok videos that really captured the imagination of people who'd never been near a trail before. They talked about stuff like how to poop on the trail and how to, eat on the trail and how to sleep and cowboy camping and all that stuff. And they had like 1 million viewers for some of their videos. So I'd seen their videos and I was inspired by them. So when I was hiking the Colorado Trail, they were hiking the CDT, Continental Divide Trail, heading the opposite direction, heading northbound. And suddenly I'm walking along near Breckenridge and I see this guy with his this big bushy black beard. And I saw him and I was like a total fanboy. I said, "Whoa, you're famous. I know you. You're famous." And later on, he was talking on another podcast, and the interviewer asked him, "So you do a lot of TikToks? Isn't that kind of a young person crowd?" And he said, um, "Well, not necessarily. There's older people who look at TikTok too. Like for example, one day I was hiking along and I saw this guy who was probably 70 years old who said to me, 'You're famous.'" And so
Nice.
I wrote back in the comments and said, "Yeah, that would have been me." And of course, he wrote back to me privately and said, "I am so sorry, dude. I did not mean to say you were that old." And well, I was that old. I probably looked like 80 that day. Given that was the
Yeah,
point.
for sure. The altitude and everything. Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it does make you feel good, when you can be out there and still hike around. And that's just where it's important to take good care of yourself and know your limits. And it is important for older people like me. I it's made a huge difference for me hiking the JMT over the CT and the Benton MacKay Trail to drop some personal weight because I was getting plantar fasciitis myself and knee problems on both of those earlier trails. I had no problems whatsoever with my knees or my feet on the JMT, and I'm convinced that's because I dropped weight in my body, and I really spent some time and some money to just try to get my gear as dialed down as possible on weight. So,
So,
um,
so even though you were older on the JMT, you
yeah,
actually it was a, and it was a harder trail physically. You actually
yeah.
felt probably your best that you felt out of all those trails on the
I did.
JMT.
I really did. And I'm hopeful that that'll, I'm a realist. But there are people who hike. Gosh, there was a lady who just recently hiked the Appalachian Trail at age 80. Um, and so and I met a guy on the JMT who was 82 out there hiking it. And he said he'd hiked it 6 times before and he was a little irritated with himself that it wasn't that easy this time. And I'm thinking, dude, you're 82.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You're out here on Pinchot, out here on Mather Pass, and just moving along. Was he moving fast? No, but he was out there. So
Yeah.
if I want to keep doing this, I want to keep doing at least one, you know, trip, whether it's a through hike or just I don't know what makes it through a long distance backpack. I'd like to do at least one a year because I think it is so great for my psyche and I just love being outdoors like
Too.
this. And I'd like to
Right.
keep doing it. And I think I've got another 10 years in me, God willing, and uh, so I just hope that's the case with. I got to take good care of myself and hike responsibly and hike lightly on my feet, and keep my gear light.
When you say it's good on your psyche,
Yeah,
tell me a little bit more about that, especially when you get back home off of the trail.
Chad, I'm not sure exactly how to explain that, but there is just something about being outdoors by myself that allows me to just relax my brain, to just drink it in. That's something where I feel incredibly fortunate to be able to volunteer as a park patroller, that I can just be out. And it doesn't matter if the trail is the Highline Canal in Denver, just a straight, uh, trail, or a something that's more rugged and more, classically scenic. Just being out there and being able to I can't really even say think because I'm not really consciously thinking about a lot of things, but I'm sort of putting my brain aside and just meditating. I suppose it's meditative is the best way to put it. And I'm not normally a meditator. I've never been good at like, it would be great to be a meditator, but I'm really not good at doing that at home. But when I'm out on the trail, it's something that really helps me.
Do you bring along, like, especially when you're solo, are you listening to audiobooks sometimes and music sometimes? How do you, because like I find for me, like I'll, especially the first few hours of the morning, I like to just be in my thoughts because
Yes.
it's when I feel the best. I love mornings. They're my favorite part of the day. As the day starts to wear on, it kind of becomes a little bit more of a grind. And that's where I'll start to like maybe plug in an audiobook or something to where, and it's weird. Like I only really listen to audiobooks when I'm through hiking.
Uh-huh.
I listen to podcasts when I'm in real life, I guess. But when I'm hiking, I like to listen to audiobooks and I like to listen to inspiring audiobooks, like autobiographies typically
Uh-huh.
of somebody going through some shit, man. That's
Right.
what I like because
Right.
it makes me feel like, oh, I'm just walking a manicured trail here. This ain't bad. They're
Yeah.
in freaking doing these 8,000-meter peaks and stuff and things like
Exactly.
that. So what does
Well,
that look like for you, I guess?
it's funny because I have the same kind of reaction as far as when I like to listen to something. Beginning of the day,
Yeah.
it's nice to just be in my own thoughts or just be in the silence. I always hike with um, I've got those bone conduction type things, shocks, I guess they call them,
Yes.
so that I can hear the things around me. I think that's important.
Mhm.
Um, like so, there's not a bear or something, that I, not that I've ever even seen a. Well, I saw a bear or two on the Backcountry Trail, but from way far away. But you want to have your wits about you and you'd be able to hear things around you. But but I will listen to music sometimes. I've got a playlist or two that I like to play. Usually something that's inspiring to get you up over some of these, you know,
Yeah.
through these passes. Sometimes inspiring to me is not necessarily inspiring to others. It can be downright corny, but I just like listening to it. Like the Ooga Chaka song. That's kind of
Yeah.
Ooga Chaka Ooga. Um,
Yeah.
which I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy as far as anybody else doing it. But for me it works. I've had some earworms where if I don't have my, I'll listen to podcasts too. I'll listen to like podcasts about trail hiking.
Yeah.
I will your podcast. I will
Nice.
listen to others where it's just it's interesting to me and I get a lot of benefit out of it. Um, and then there's times when one thing I took along with me on the JMT was a Kindle, a small Kindle, and I'm glad because you go long stretches there where you have to sort of nurse your electronics and you don't have nurse your battery life. I didn't have a solar panel with me, and I think a solar panel would work on the JMT probably better than any other trail just because of how bright it is and how typically cloudless it is. But especially going northbound because then you've got the solar panel on your back facing the sun. Um, but there are times when I've had to just play music in my head, and when I do that, I'll sometimes be humming along like, you know, I think I've hummed probably hundreds of miles to the song from Bridge on the River Kwai. Da 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 da
Yeah.
da 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 da.
Yeah.
You know, stupid, but it becomes an earworm, and you can just do it as you're hiking along, and then you realize later, God, I never want to do that again until the next trail, and then you pick it up again.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny because sometimes like even words will just pop into my head that like I haven't thought of, like just words that like I'm like, what does that word even mean? I don't know, but you can't look it up. You don't have Google.
Right?
I mean, especially when you're on the JMT, like you don't got service till
No, no,
freaking
not at all.
Red's Meadow, pretty
Right.
much. I mean, day. I mean, it was almost the end of the trail for me, essentially, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's funny, man. Okay, well, here's a good question. So if a 25-year-old hiker, right, came up to you and they're like, Rolf, how do I keep hiking 14-mile, 15-mile, sometimes 22-mile days at 67? Like I'm super
Yeah.
interested in being able to do this not only just at the level I am at 25, but really just like the longevity piece of it. What's a big piece of advice that you would give to somebody, and what is something that people miss the mark on? Meaning, what do they get wrong about that
Yeah.
type of that thing?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, and I think that in some ways I'm not the best example because there's some things you do, for example, that I don't do. Uh, I'm just lazy. I my wife is terrific at doing yoga and stretching. I am not. I'm just not a yoga person or a stretching person, and that might come back and bite me at some point. But I do think that I stretch by walking. I mean, I get out and walk uh, most days. And the walking I do with some weight on my pack, that's something else too. It was more recently I've been sort of doing, I guess, what they call rucking, where you
Mhm.
intentionally put more weight in your day pack so that you
Mhm.
not only get used to carrying it on your shoulders, but you're getting more exercise and you're burning more calories that way. So I will purposely carry more water than I need and stuff like that just to stay fit. I think also a bad example is I have tended to yo-yo with my weight. I'm really going to try hard now to just stay below 170. I got up as high as like 211, 212. I think I look back at some pictures of myself hiking the Benton Mackay Trail and I was flat out fat. And I did lose weight on that trail like I lose weight on every trail. But it's I guess I was rationalizing, well, if I have this weight to lose, I've got that fat to burn, and that's good. But no, I don't think it is for your, in hindsight,
Yeah.
for your skeletal, for your ligaments and stuff like that. So I think that's important to take care of yourself. I've never smoked, um, and I think that that's important. I have seen people on the trail who smoke cigarettes, and I think that that's difficult. Plus, you see butts on the trail all the time, and that drives me crazy when I'm trying to
Yeah, I
pick up
bet.
trash. But
Yeah.
um, the other thing is really focus on your feet. Um, Trail runners, like I use Ultra Lone Peaks, and I love. It took a little while getting used to the zero drop on them, but it is they're good shoes. The one thing that they are pretty bad at is they've got a horrible insole. So get yourself a good supportive pair of insoles like the um, Super Feet. I use Super Feet Blues, and those are great. Yeah, they're more expensive. They suddenly turn $110 or $150 shoe into a $200 shoe, but it's worth it. Um, and I think also trekking poles. The balance thing definitely is an issue as you get older. And I know for me, I have to be more cautious with my hiking, both on the trail and training for the trail. I think that eating right is important. I find that I lose a hell of a lot more weight by eating right than I do by exercise. I'm tending to eat a whole lot more. Jane and I are tending to eat a whole lot more salads and things like that. And as you get older, you don't need to eat as much. Definitely notice that. So there can be days go by where we really don't have a standard sit down meal. We'll nosh on salads, and that's enough for each of us. So so I think listening to that is important. And finally, uh, making sure that you're setting realistic goals. I am never going to hike all the 14ers now because I don't want to be one of those guys who you hear about it all the time. Guys who like me are in their 60s who decide, okay, now I'm going to climb the Crestone Needle, and and it's probably physically within their abilities, but something happens as you get older, I think, where your reflexes are perhaps not quite as good. Um, and you constantly keep hearing of people who just get into accidents because they're they're older and they just overdo it. I doubt I'll ever do as much backcountry skiing as I used to for that reason. Um, and the same goes with, you know, that's the nice thing about most of these through hikes is they're on established trails. And
Right.
even though some of the trails are insanely up and down, like out east, but at least you're on a trail and there are other people around. So I think that's those are the main things for me. And also, hey, we're older. Take some time over a couple of years, spend some money to lighten to lighten the load on your back. There are um, a million resources out there on how you can get a much lighter pack. And I still see people when I shuttle people to the Colorado Trail who just have insanely heavy packs and metal water bottles and
Yeah.
packs that are huge bear canisters. I mean bear spray that's suitable for grizzly country, but certainly not for Colorado.
Right.
stuff like that. So I think that's
Oh,
especially more important for older folks like me.
yeah, absolutely. No, that is a tremendous summary right there. Because man, it seems like every time I've ever asked somebody around your age that are still crushing it, like the thing that they say, which is basically what you're saying too, is don't stop.
Yeah, don't stop.
Like you got to just keep being consistent. Don't ever stop because it's way harder to get back into it. And
That's
that's
very
kind of what
true.
you're saying with a lot of this stuff right here is like be consistent, with the weight fluctuations, maybe just stay at a consistent weight. Like everything's kind of about almost like consistency, especially it seems like as you get older.
Yeah. And you've talked to yourself about having like herniated disc issues and stuff. And I had a herniated
Yeah.
disc years ago because I was at my desk job and I just leaned over to try to tie a shoe and I leaned improperly. You gotta know that about your how to use your body. Lift with your knees, not with your back. And stuff like that. And um, be a little careful with the watch your footing because you can if you lose your footing, you can stretch a ligament, and as we get older, it's just tougher to fix those things, especially if you're out in the
Yeah.
middle of a trail.
Right. So, Ralph, what the heck you got planned for next year or the next couple years? Are you trying to do like the TRT? Are you trying to do
I've got a
what are you
couple
trying to
of
do?
yeah, I mean, finishing the John Muir Trail, that truly was a bucket list item for me. I wanted to
Right.
connect those dots, and it was a spiritual experience to do. It was spiritual for me to be on top of Mount Whitney 37 years after I'd climbed it the first time. And the first time, I had to stop every 100 paces and just gasp for air for like 2 minutes until I could hike some more. Now, granted, I had a pack back then that was probably about 60 pounds, uh, but this time I was able to go up there and it was very comfortable and it was moonlight hiking. It was great. So I just felt really
No way.
nice doing that. But um, yeah, I want to keep doing some trails. A little part of me thinks, oh, wouldn't it be so wonderful to do like a real long distance trail like the AT or the CDT or the PCT? Number one, I'm not sure I physically have that in me. And number two, that is a definite that's a huge imposition on my wife and I do other things with friends that I would have to set aside. So I don't think that kind of trail's in my future, at least as a through hike, maybe as a section hike. I do want to section hike the rest of the Continental Divide Trail within Colorado, especially the south part. But I'd like to do that because the Colorado Trail and the Continental Divide Trail are about contiguous for about 300 miles. Um, so there's still about, I forget how many miles, but there's still several hundred miles of the Continental Divide Trail within Colorado that are separate, and I'd kind of like to do that. The Tahoe Rim Trail sounds really interesting because it's a nice loop. I could drive out there, park, do it. Far fewer permitting issues than with the John Muir Trail.
Mhm.
I like the terrain and all that. Um, Another one that I just heard about a few days ago is the Santa Fe to Taos through hike, which a person has created. It's about 130 miles. You start like in the middle of Santa Fe. You can even walk up Canyon Road if you want to with the art galleries, and then you're hiking all the way to Taos. And it sounds like they've done a fantastic job stitching together that trail from others. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's something that I think I'd like to look at. And I've got a buddy who's from Albuquerque and is interested in hiking out there. Shorter loops. There's so many amazing loop hikes, and the reason loop hikes are so cool in Colorado is you can, it's easier. You've got your car there.
Logistics. Yeah.
The Lost Creek loops. I've done several of them out there, and there are more to do. Out east, the long trail is kind of my sights. Best time to hike that I think is in September right here, and so I'd have to work that out because my wife and I often like to travel overseas and stuff in September. But that's something that I would like to do. Some people say, well, you got to do that to get the triple tiara. Instead of the triple
Right.
tiara, the triple tiara is the long trail, the Colorado Trail and the John Muir Trail. Well, I feel like I'd like the Benton MacKay Trail, which is 300 miles, pretty much contiguous with the Appalachian Trail. So I guess I could consider that an alternate triple tiara. But I still think I'd like to do the long trail.
Yeah.
And then there's overseas hikes. we were recently out in Scotland, and oh my gosh, the hiking out there, like, we weren't hiking, but there were people out there who were through hiking some pretty involved trails at the West Highland Way and stuff. Just looked epic.
Yep.
So you never know. And because is that if you set your sights a little lower than, you know, 1,000 or 2,000 miles at a stretch, there definitely are hikes out there to do at my age and beyond.
Oh man. Look, he ain't slowing down, people. He ain't slowing
Okay.
down. I
Thanks.
love this. I
It's inspiring to
no.
be talking with you because it reminds me, don't slow down, dude.
Well, no, dude, I'm telling you, you're inspiring me. This is why I love talking to older folks that are still just crushing it, man. Because every time I feel like, oh man, I'm kind of getting older, or something. No, these people are still crushing it, and I'm half their age. It's just incredible to me, man. So
Just the other day, I was listening to your podcast. You had Darwin on the trail on there, and Darwin was talking about how he's 40 and he's slowing down, and it's like, dude, you're you you you're number one, you're so fit, and number two, you have such abilities and knowledge. Maybe in your own mind, you're slowing down from when you were hiking like 30, 35 miles a day or more, or
yeah,
you're you're a kid.
yeah, absolutely. So, all right, last question for you here, Ralph.
Here.
And this has been great, dude. I'm so glad I had you on the
Oh, me
podcast.
too.
And I need to recommend you to, I don't know if you listen to his podcast. It's actually one of the first podcasts I started listening to when I started through hiking was, it's called the Byland Podcast with Emery Wagner.
Oh,
And yeah, he did the PCT in, I think 17 or 18 or something like that. But I'm going to recommend him to you because I'm going to recommend you to him because I think you guys would chop it up great. But dude, so as a closing question here, so when you look back someday, like what has been, you think, your most cherished moment in the mountains? And that's probably going to be a real hard question, but maybe like the first thing that pops into your mind, like what is something that you'll never forget, man?
It's if I had some more time to think about it, I would probably think about a lot of places, like
Right.
vistas and things like that, and seeing some incredibly scenic vistas and stuff. But the first thing that came into my mind when you asked that question is the people. Um,
Yeah.
I have made lifelong friends through this, that in a way that I'm kind of an introvert, and to spend day after day with people out on the trail, or out in the backcountry. I mean, that's how I met my wife. That's how I made friends who are like Eric and Elizabeth are going to be lifelong friends. And I've never spent more time with just two people, uh, than the nearly 4 weeks we had together on the Benton Mackay Trail. Um, you see people over and over, and I want to take photos of people so I remember them, because when you're out on the trail, people are good. You even if somebody's a bit of a jerk one day. I remember there was a kid on the trail one day who was just being kind of a, snob, like, well, how many miles have you hiked? And ran into him a few days later, and his attitude had changed because he'd been out on the trail for a while and he realized what was important. And I think the trend was changing him. Um, and so, this crazy world we're living in right now and all the nutty stuff that's going on, I get out on the trail, I can set all that aside, and I don't care what your politics are, whether you're religious or not, whether what your background is. We're all out here as human beings and in fellowship together, and it just makes me feel so good. I almost get a little, emotional thinking about it, but that's something that I really, really enjoy about being on the trail, and that's what I've gotten out of it the most. I think, even with all the, the incredible sights and stuff that I love taking photos, and so the photos tend to be of the sights that, the more I think about it, the more I think it's about the people.
Man, that is so good. And when I first started through hiking, man, I didn't know that was a thing. I guess like I thought I was just I'm gonna be a solo guy,
Yeah.
lone wolf, blah blah blah. Man,
There's a
dude,
generosity of spirit out there that is just, I've
yeah,
met, I've met people who are legends in the hiking community, and they are all so generous, free with advice, free with encouragement and inspiration. And I just I keep thinking, man, I hope I can be a tenth of the human beings they are. Just the way they are. So
Well, Ralph, I guarantee you this. You've inspired a lot of people that are going to be listening to this podcast right
I
now.
hope so. I
So
hope so.
yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man. Where can people find you if they want to find some of your stuff? I know you had a JMT, like you had a YouTube, actually, a YouTube
I've got
channel,
a
'cause you had some
YouTube.
YouTube or JMT photos, I remember.
Yeah, I do.
Something.
I blog for the
Or
Trek.
CT.
I blog for the Trek, and I've been writing some articles for them on previous trips. And I still have to write up my articles on the John Muir Trail, and that's for the Trek. But my Instagrams is Rolf Denvers with an S at the end, ROLF Denver and S, Rolf Denvers. My YouTube channel is Rolf Denver. I also do TikTok through Rolf Denver. So those are probably
Let's go.
yeah, I know. I get teased about being such a millennial. Yeah. Well, like yeah, literally, I do get teased for being on TikTok as an old guy, but it's just different ways to get people out there. And I like nothing better than somebody seeing something and saying, "Wow, that's inspiring. I'd like to get out there." And
Yeah.
so that's the best way. Rolf Denver or Rolf Denders.
Awesome. Dude.
So,
This has been great, man. Thank you, dude. So great to meet you.
same here. Sean.
And yeah, like we've been messaging for a couple years, kind of here and there and stuff like that. But to hear your story and I mean, dude, like I'm gonna go to the gym after this. I'm gonna be like, man, be kind of listening to this podcast in my head. And yeah, so I thank you for coming on, man. It was a great talk.
I'll go out
Yeah.
for a walk. I should go to the gym because my upper body strength right now is 0. But
Yeah.
get a little more balance. But yeah, it's inspiring for me too, and hearing all the rest of your podcasts and your guests and everything.
I appreciate it, man.